What's up, everybody? Peter Exoso Coffer here. Today, all things music, doing another episode. The question of the day: 2022, does today's music suck? A lot going on in the music industry right now. I'm gonna get in depth and cover some of that. But the short answer is no. There is a lot of really good Gen Z and millennial artists, and going to start off by going off of an article from October 11, 2022 out of Billboard. And the title is Too Many Songs, Not Enough Hits. Pop music is struggling to create stars. So there's going to be some numbers. I'm going to drop some of these numbers and then we'll go into more depth. So first number. From 2001 to 2004, over 30 first-timers cracked the top 10 annually. In 2019, only 15 first-timers reached the top 10, and in 2021, the number of new entrants into the top 10 was just 13. So the article then goes in and talks about why this is, and one of the big reasons the article gives is the rise of independent music artists and how easy it is to get on the streaming services. And I must admit, I'm one of those. I am guilty of that. From what this article says, there are 80,000 new songs being uploaded every day to the streaming services. So essentially, the article is saying it's hard to break through with this flood of new music. And ultimately, this Billboard article says record companies are going to have to redefine what success is, because it's just getting harder to break new acts. So, criticisms of today's music. I mean, I struggled with navigating this new system of music. A lot of boomers and Gen Xers also struggle with that. And to me, a big portion of the struggle is you got to listen differently, because I'm going to do a follow-up to this episode, but, the albums are put together differently. And so, we're used to being album-centered Gen Xers and baby boomers, and the industry is song centered, and the goal of the albums now, is to basically collect a lot of similar sounding songs and to try to squeeze as many hits out as possible. Wasn't the case. I mean, you had a lot more diversity of sound and experimentation and things like that in the past. A lot of it has to do with there's just less money out there, for the labels to get. I mean, because only a handful of artists, make money streaming. So, so you have to really try to get more radio hits. It's still, I mean, the top 5 song is still $1 million, and so that's really the vehicle for albums now. So today's music, going back to, the one and only Rick Beato, he calls this the era of perfect music, no mistakes. Very rarely are there tempo shifts, quantization, and auto-tune. So what's quantization? I mean, you can go in and actually fix the timing. The note's a little off, or you hit the key wrong. You can go in and fix a lot of that stuff now and use digital audio workstations. And the argument that he and many old schoolers make is sometimes those mistakes really give songs and music, color and makes them unique. So for me, I haven't stated this yet, but I'm a true believer that, music is the international language. It's interesting because for years, I mean, folks Cheap Trick live at Budokan, and I don't know how many folks there in Japan knew English back then. But for me, I mean, reggaeton is mostly Spanish. I didn't do very good in Spanish. I didn't take any foreign languages in high school. I tried Spanish as a freshman in college at Ohio State. I did not do very well. Turned it into a K-pop fan too, and they use oftentimes in some of those songs two, three, maybe even four different languages in the song. Still love the songs, so it really is kind of a music is the international language. Um, but going back, does music today suck? Well, no. I mean, you have Bruno Mars, you have her, Post Malone. A lot of people talk about Miguel being, very gifted and talented. Uh, Olivia Rodrigo is an amazing songwriter. I mean, there's great songwriting in her first album, and the basis of great music is songwriting, and she has it, and she's good. So I'm saying this to say that there's a lot of good music out there coming from uh, Gen Z and millennials. I mean, my mind was blown when Post Malone did that quarantine concert where he, covered uh, Nirvana. I mean, it was just, amazing. I didn't never knew he could do that, and so I'm kind of waiting for that. I mean, one of the problems is that these labels have these new artists on lockdown and won't let them kind of spread their wings and grow and fly. So I'm looking forward to the time when some of these younger artists, stand up to the record companies and just be like, hey, I'm doing this, take it or leave it. So I said, I gave you some background on some of the things I read and where I get to the music history, and I mentioned Ed Ward. And Ed Ward has two books out on music history. One is from the late 40s, and it's in the title, from the late 40s, I think, to 64. And the second one is 64 to the mid 70s. But found out some interesting information in that second book, and that is Stevie Wonder saw his record contract with Motown coming to an end. Never knew this, but he went to New York City and recorded four albums. They ended up being um, those great, I mean, classic run that he had, in the early 70s. Talking Book, Music of My Mind, Fulfilling This, and I can't remember the fourth one, but all those were considered masterpieces, and he really those four he capped it off with the sounds and the key of life, which is just amazing. So he went and recorded all of those and brought them back to Barry Gordon and be like, yeah, these are my next four albums. Release them or I'm gone. And Barry Gordy was not the most uh, um, what's the word I'm looking for? He liked to stick to a formula and didn't like a bunch of experimentation. But, and we'll get into more of this when, I do Motown and branding. He didn't have a choice. I mean, he had lost a lot of his best songwriters because they were hired guns and they didn't get ownership of their songs. So he didn't have much of a choice. So he did go ahead and release those four albums, which was a good thing for him and for Motown. I don't know if that could happen today because these record labels are so they're all in groupthink. Record companies have never been the most forward-thinking business people, and it's certainly a lot worse than it has been. I mean, the whole post Napster and the streaming, has just made the being allergic to innovation, in music and music styles even worse by record labels. So record labels, what have they missed historically? Well, uh, they wrote off MTV when that first came. They didn't see the uh, the tool that it could be to help promote their artists. So the streaming platforms, they wrote those off, and basically um, Steve Jobs, had to go to them and you know talk them into it, and here's the deal. Steve Jobs with Apple ended up being a bad deal, and a lot of this is coming from another book, Song Machine by John Seabrook. But the deal that Steve Jobs offered them was a deal that was better than what they had before, but it was a better deal for Steve Jobs and Apple. And full disclosure, I'm kind of like I am an Apple fanboy, so I have my Mac, I have my iPads, and I got the first iPhone, and I'm not leaving. So I'm certainly not downing Apple, but the deal he cut, it was better. He sold them on the quality of Apple and iTunes, but he did that because he wanted to sell a bunch of iPods, and it was smart on his behalf. But he did not. I mean, they didn't ask him to make it so that iPads could only play music from iTunes or a paying store. You could still go to Napster. You could still essentially get bootleg songs and play them on an iPod. So again, they were just flat out stupid to cut that deal. Another thing that they totally laughed off and didn't see as a benefit was American Idol. From what I understand, the show went to some of the record labels and like, hey, you want in on this? You want some input? And they're like, no, this is stupid. Of course, it wasn't stupid. I mean, Kelly Clarkson, Ruben Studdard, and a bunch of other people made a lot of money for them. And so the latest thing is TikTok. And going back to that Billboard article I just quoted. They admit that they have no clue about what breaks on TikTok and what doesn't break on TikTok. But again, they were flat-footed again. So these are, I mean, we're talking about in the last, the major platforms that the record companies did not control, bubbled up independently of them. They did not see it coming. They saw it, essentially they laughed at it, and they were scrambling to figure it out afterwards. Now, just think of if they thought of any of this themselves, they would have made a lot more money than But these are now they're working off of someone else's platform. So, do I put a lot of the blame on the struggling of the music industry on record companies? You bet. If you go back into the mid 70s, a lot of record companies were owned by and run by people rooted in the music business, whether musicians themselves or whatnot. Now, the only one who really, of the big record moguls who has any background in music is Jimmy Iovine. And Jimmy, started off as a sound engineer. Can't remember if it was in the 60s, early 70s. But Jimmy Iovine is a legend in the music industry. But he also came up with artists and understands artists and whatnot. I mean, the other big wig, obviously historically, and I think Clive Davis, and I think Clive Davis is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and deserves to be there. But, he's a lawyer. He's not, and he's signed a lot of big acts and broken a lot of big acts. And I'm just started his biography, so maybe I will do an episode on one of my multiple brands I have with music here on my YouTube channel, kind of reacting to Clive Davis's biography. So one cultural entity that has thrived in the last 20 years, unlike um, the record industry, is Marvel, and Marvel and their films, and Marvel, as compared to DC, has done very well. DC, and boils down to what I just said earlier. I mean, DC has been run by business, the suits, and Marvel has been run by uh, creative folks. So Avi Arad is a film producer. He ran Marvel from 1993 to 2006, and now Kevin Feige runs uh, Marvel. And since 2007, he is a film producer as well. So these are Marvel is now run by people who are in the trenches around the creative people. They were there with the directors and the actors and actresses, and the folks behind the scenes, and the special effects folks. So they know film. They're not in a suite somewhere. They know film, making films. From moving among the people that do it, and the music industry is not like that, unfortunately, and that's a big problem, and so that's the struggle. So does music today suck? No. But you have to really listen to music differently today. So when I say listen to music differently, what do I mean? Most of the newer artists, because of how they structure albums now, I don't usually, for first of all, I usually kind of, for lack of a better term, let the hive mind, pick the best songs. So I go through and listen to on a weekend a couple of the hot charts off of Spotify, and the main chart off of Tidal, which is more heavily hip hop based, just to see what's popping. And obviously, when I'm driving in the car, I'm listening to the top 40 radio station, so I know what's going on. But for most acts now, because of how they structure albums, and it is now a song-driven industry rather than album-driven. If you go on YouTube and just put in advice for new songwriters and new musicians and music artists, they pretty much most of it is saying to focus on singles or 4-song EPs and whatnot. So I usually if I want to take a deeper dive into artists, I'll do their the This Is on Spotify, and for Titles Essentials. And then I'm a big advocate of finding really good playlists. And so for me, I mean, hip hop is still, I think, the most progressive genre out there and doing some good things. But even, a lot of the mainstream hip hop is kind of also, for basically in that formula grind. So I like to jump on pretty much weekly to alternative hip hop on Spotify. K-pop, even K-pop, with all the great songwriting, it can get, monotonous listening to albums. So I like K-pop also on Spotify. And then All New Punk. That's another, for the punk lovers out there. That's a good playlist on Spotify. And finally, gotta tip the hat to Gen Z and millennials who play jazz, because probably and I know jazz is the acquired taste, but some of the we're in the golden age of jazz. I mean, some of the things that they're doing is amazing. So I would 21st century jazz and state of jazz, both of those playlists on Spotify are amazing. So, kind of rummage around and find some good playlists. I mean, because again, it's not, you know, it's singles driven, and what playlists do is they get the best and group them together and you know, songs into you know, like interests. So thank you again for listening. Signing out. Um, Check out my music here. Got 4 albums here on YouTube and also on all the streaming services. And what I got 2 science fiction novels on Amazon and a novella. Don't forget to hit that like button. And what else am I forgetting? Oh yeah, subscribe to the channel. So thanks again, and I'll see you next episode.